Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. The clouds over Willow Creek hung low, heavy with the threat of rain. In a modest brick house on Maple Lane, Elise Harper poured herself a glass of Merlot, her fingers unsteady. The kitchen clock ticked relentlessly. 17 minutes until her husband, Nathan, would step through the door, unaware of the confession she was steeling herself to deliver. Elise had traded her usual sweatshirt and leggings for a deep sapphire dress that hugged her frame, her makeup precise but understated. This wasn't about seduction. It was about disruption. She wanted to shake the foundation, to see if Nathan would notice her the way he hadn't in months. Her friend Tessa, a whirlwind of confidence and sharp edges, had been planting seeds for weeks. "Elise, you're fading into the wallpaper of your own life," Tessa had said over coffee. "Marriage doesn't have to be a leash. A little spark from someone new can remind you who you are." Elise had brushed it off at first, but the words took root, especially on nights when Nathan came home drained, his eyes skimming past her to the TV. Was it right? Maybe not. But Elise didn't want right. She wanted to feel alive. She planned this evening meticulously. Nathan's favorite rosemary chicken was roasting in the oven, filling the house with a warm, familiar scent. A bottle of French wine sat in an ice bucket, condensation beating on the glass. She needed him relaxed, disarmed by routine, before she revealed her decision. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. "Tonight's your moment. Be the flame, not the ember. He'll either wake up or watch you burn brighter without him." Elise's pulse quickened. A flicker of doubt crept in, but she drowned it with another sip of wine. This was for her. At 6:08, the front door clicked open. Nathan's work boots scuffed against the mat, his jacket damp from a light drizzle. He dropped his toolbox by the door, his eyes catching the set table. "Well, damn," he said, a tired smile breaking through. "What's the occasion?" Elise forced a smile, handing him a glass of wine. "Something like that," she said softly. "Rough day." He nodded, taking the glass with a grateful sigh. "You okay?" he asked, his brow creasing as he studied her. "I will be," she replied, gesturing to the table. "Let's eat." Dinner passed in near silence, the clink of forks louder than their words. The chicken was perfect, but the air felt taut, like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Elise set her fork down, her heart hammering. "Nathan, we need to talk." His posture stiffened, his fork pausing midair. "All right," he said cautiously. "What's up?" She took a breath, her voice steady but low. "I need something, Nathan. Not just from you, from life. For me." His eyes narrowed slightly, but he stayed quiet. "I felt unseen," she continued. "Not unloved, but like I'm just here." "Tessa says." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Tessa," he muttered, cutting her off. "The woman who thinks happy hour is a personality." Elise pressed on, ignoring the jab. "She reminded me I'm still young, that I deserve to feel wanted. So I've decided something. For a little while, just a few months, I want to try something different." Nathan leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Different how?" Elise's throat felt dry, but she forced the words out. "I want to see other people." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan's wine glass hovered, then lowered slowly to the table. "You're asking to cheat," he said, his voice flat. "No," she said quickly. "Not cheat. I want us to stay married, but open. Temporarily." For a moment, he just stared, his face a mask. Then he let out a slow breath. "So you want my blessing to step out?" Elise flinched at the word blessing, but nodded. "It's not about hurting you. It's about me feeling alive again." Nathan's eyes darkened, but his voice stayed calm. "Don't dress it up, Elise. You're asking for a free pass." He stood, his chair scraping softly against the floor. "I'll sleep in the spare room tonight." Elise's heart lurched. "Wait, can't we at least talk about it?" Nathan turned, his gaze piercing. "Talk. You've already decided. What's left to say?" A faint, bitter smile touched his lips. "You want to play with fire? Don't expect me to hold the extinguisher." Without another word, he walked down the hall. The guest room door clicked shut, a sound that echoed louder than any slam. Elise stood frozen, wine glass in hand, her chest tight with a mix of defiance and dread. She'd expected anger, maybe tears, anything but this quiet, controlled withdrawal. In the silence, she didn't yet realize the storm she'd ignited, or that Nathan, in his stillness, was already gathering the kindling for a reckoning. Elise barely slept that night. The king-size bed felt like an ocean, cold and empty without Nathan's familiar warmth. He'd kept his word, retreating to the guest room, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She'd expected to feel liberated, maybe even exhilarated, but instead, a heavy unease settled in her chest, like a stone she couldn't dislodge. By morning, though, Tessa's late-night text had fanned the embers of her resolve. He didn't lose it? That's a green light, girl. He's brooding, not fighting. He'll come around when he sees you're still a catch. Elise stared at the message, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Maybe Tessa was right. This wasn't betrayal, it was reinvention. At work, the world seemed sharper, more vibrant. Elise wore a crimson blouse she'd buried in her closet for years, its neckline daring but tasteful. Heads turned in the office. Whispers followed her through the break room. By noon, her phone buzzed with a message from Julian, a graphic designer with soulful eyes and a knack for poetry. Caught you in the elevator earlier. You're glowing today. Elise's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. A simple thanks would have been safe, but safe wasn't what she craved. Maybe I'm glowing for you, she typed, her pulse quickening as she hit send. Julian's reply was instant, bold. I like it. Drinks tonight? It snowballed from there. Drinks became a late-night coffee, then a dinner 2 nights later. Julian was everything Nathan hadn't been lately. Attentive, effusive, noticing the way her earrings caught the light, complimenting her laugh like it was a rare melody. Elise felt seen, desired, alive in a way that made her skin tingle. She laughed louder, stood taller, and started crafting careful lies. Not just for Nathan, but for herself. This is temporary, she told herself. Just a season. But the thrill was addictive. Nathan, meanwhile, was a ghost in their home. He didn't yell or plead, didn't demand explanations. He moved through the house with a quiet efficiency, his eyes sharp but distant, like a man studying a blueprint. Elise mistook his silence for surrender, but Nathan, a structural engineer, was a man of precision. He noticed patterns, the way Elise guarded her phone, the new perfume she wore, the way she flinched when it buzzed late at night. She thought he was retreating. He was observing. One evening, Elise came home early and found Nathan in the garage, tinkering with something, a tangle of wires and a small black box. He slid it under a tarp when he saw her, his movements too quick to be casual. "Still fixing things out here?" she asked, forcing a smile. Nathan wiped his hands on a rag, his face unreadable. "Clears my head," he said, his voice low. His eyes didn't meet hers, but there was something in his posture, taut, deliberate, that made her skin prickle. "You're out late a lot," he added, almost as an afterthought. Elise's stomach twisted, but she shrugged. "Just catching up with friends." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You know this isn't forever, right? I'm not trying to ruin us." Nathan looked up, his gaze steady, like a flame burning low but fierce. "Ruin's already started, Elise," he said quietly. "You just don't see the cracks yet." The words hung in the air, chilling her more than any shout could have. She walked inside, her heart pounding, telling herself he was just hurt, that he'd come around. Weeks passed, and Elise's nights with Julian grew bolder. A stolen kiss in a dimly lit bar. A reckless moment in his car during a lunch break, rain drumming on the roof. Each encounter felt like a shot of adrenaline, making her feel dangerous, wanted. But shadows crept in. A coworker, Mara, stopped making small talk in the hallway. A cryptic post, it appeared on Elise's desk. "Eyes are everywhere." She laughed it off, but unease gnawed at her. Then Tessa called, her voice tight. "Something's up," she said. "I got a weird email, someone asking about my extracurriculars. And HR's been sniffing around my department." Elise's mouth went dry. "You think Nathan?" Tessa snorted, but there was fear in it. "You said he's quiet. That's the kind who scare me most." That night, Elise opened her laptop to check her email. A new folder sat on her desktop, labeled Elise_private. Her breath caught. Inside were screenshots of her texts with Julian, timestamps of her locations, even a PDF titled activity_log.pdf with dates and addresses. Her hands shook as she deleted it, panic clawing at her throat. This wasn't just spying, it was surgical, relentless. Nathan hadn't just been watching, he'd been documenting. At 1:43 a.m., she crept to the guest room, her knock barely audible. "Nathan." No answer. She pushed the door open. The bed was made, untouched. His boots were gone, his truck missing from the driveway. No note, no clothes taken, just absence. Elise stood in the dark hallway, clutching her phone, dread curling through her like smoke. She'd wanted to feel alive, but now she felt like prey, and Nathan, wherever he was, held the match to a fire she couldn't yet see. 3 days passed with no word from Nathan. No calls, no texts, not even a stray receipt left on the counter. The house felt like a hollow shell, its silence amplifying Elise's growing panic. She told herself he'd return. He always did, eventually. Nathan was steady, predictable, a man who thrived on order. But this absence felt different, deliberate. Sleep eluded her, and when it came, it was fractured by dreams of locked doors and burning papers. On the 4th day, a letter arrived, slipped under the front door. No stamp, no sender's name. Elise's hands trembled as she opened it. A single typed page read, "Elise, I won't block your path, but choices have weight. Watch your steps now. N." She read it 5 times, each word tightening the knot in her stomach. What was he planning? Tessa didn't answer her calls that morning. Julian's text had stopped. His last message, "A Kurt needs space." Elise's fingers fumbled through social media, searching for clues, but found nothing. Then her phone rang, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Harper," a gravelly voice said. "This is Officer Kendall, Willow Creek PD. We found your vehicle abandoned near Blackthorn Ravine, about 10 miles out. Looks like it was dumped." Elise's heart stuttered. "My car? That's impossible. It's in the garage." The officer paused. "Not your car, ma'am. Your husband's truck." Her knees buckled. "Is he okay?" she whispered. "Mr. Harper's not missing," Kendall said. "We spoke with him this morning. He asked us to inform you he's transferring all assets tied to your name and the marriage. You'll also receive a restraining order notice soon." Elise's breath caught. "Restraining order? Why?" The officer's tone was clipped. "You need to speak with your lawyer, ma'am." The call ended, leaving her staring at the letter in her hand. By evening, the whispers had erupted into a storm. A video surfaced, shared anonymously on the company's internal messaging platform. It was grainy, just 30 seconds long, but unmistakable. Elise's voice, her laugh, a man's murmur, Julian's, recorded in what looked like her bedroom. The caption read, "Vows don't bend, they break. So do those who make them." The file was meant for HR, but someone leaked it to the wider staff. By 5 p.m., it was on local X pages, her name trending with hashtags like Willow Creek Scandal. Elise's phone buzzed with notifications, each one a dagger. Cheater. Homewrecker. Did she think he wouldn't find out? She met Tessa that night in a deserted lot behind a gas station. Tessa's usual bravado was gone, her face pale under the streetlight. "It's Nathan," she said, voice low. "He's not just mad, he's dismantling you." Elise's voice cracked. "What do you mean?" Tessa leaned closer. "Someone sent my boss a file. Me and Ryan, me and Cole. Stuff I didn't even know was out there. I'm on probation at work now." Elise's stomach churned. "I found files on my laptop, too. He's been tracking me, Tessa, for weeks." Tessa's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You said this would be fun," Elise hissed. "You said it was safe." Tessa's laugh was brittle. "I said it'd wake you up. You're the one who thought it wouldn't cost anything." The next morning, Elise was summoned to the company's conference room. 3 faces waited. HR, legal, and a stern woman she didn't recognize, likely security. A thick folder sat on the table. "We've received evidence," the HR manager said, "suggesting misuse of company resources, inappropriate conduct, and a breach of our ethics policy." Elise's mouth went dry as they slid the folder toward her. Inside were printouts, her texts with Julian, office keycard logs, even calendar entries synced with Julian's desk locations. "How did you get this?" she asked, voice barely audible. No one answered. The security woman spoke up. "We also have audio, sent by a third party." Elise's heart sank. "Nathan," she whispered. Silence. She wasn't fired outright. They'd review her case, but the message was clear. Elise left the room, her legs unsteady, shame burning her cheeks. When she reached home, her key wouldn't turn. The locks had been changed. On the porch, her belongings were neatly boxed, a note taped to one. "You wanted freedom. Here it is. The fire's yours now." Elise sank to her knees, rain starting to fall, soaking the cardboard. Nathan hadn't raised his voice, hadn't confronted her. He'd simply turned her world to ash with a precision that left her breathless, wondering how much further the flames would spread. The rain-soaked boxes on the porch were more than just Elise's possessions. They were fragments of a life she'd taken for granted, now stripped away with surgical precision. She hauled them to Tessa's cramped apartment, where the air was thick with tension. Tessa barely spoke, her eyes fixed on her phone as Elise paced. "Have you heard from Julian?" Elise asked, her voice fraying. Tessa's jaw tightened. His fiancée threw him out. "You didn't know he was engaged, did you?" Elise froze, her breath catching. "He said they were done," she stammered. Tessa's gaze was cold. That's what they all say when they want to fling. Within days, Elise's name was a local wildfire. Screenshots of her texts with Julian spread across X, fueled by anonymous accounts that seemed to know too much. She thought she could play and not pay. Nathan deserves better. Willow Creek's own soap opera star. The comments were relentless, each one chipping away at her. She tried to post a defense on X, a shaky video explaining her side, but the backlash was instant. "Crocodile tears," one user wrote. "You burned your own house down." Elise deleted the post, her hands trembling. Nathan remained a phantom. He didn't comment, didn't gloat, didn't need to. His silence was his weapon, letting the world tear her apart while he stayed clean. Legal papers arrived soon after. Divorce proceedings expedited with ruthless efficiency. Nathan's lawyer, Claire Voss, was a legend in Willow Creek, sharp, unyielding, with a reputation for dismantling opponents without raising her voice. In the mediation room, Elise sat across from her, nerves raw. "You're entitled to nothing," Voss said, her tone even. "No house, no savings, no support. We have evidence, texts, recordings, timelines, intent." Elise's voice broke. "We were still married. He never asked me to stop." Voss's eyes glinted. "He didn't have to, Mrs. Harper. You handed him the evidence." The hearing was brutal in its brevity. The judge barely glanced at Elise as Nathan's evidence was presented. Hotel receipts, GPS data, security footage from the office parking lot. Nathan stood, calm and composed, delivering a single statement. "My wife didn't betray me. She abandoned our marriage. She wanted freedom, so I let her have it. But in doing so, she showed me who she really was. I didn't lose a partner. I lost an illusion." The words cut deeper than any scream. Elise looked at him, searching for anger, pain, anything, but his face was stone, his eyes distant. He was done. That night, Elise checked into a motel, the neon sign flickering outside her window. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "You okay?" Elise stared at the screen, anger simmering beneath her exhaustion. "You said this would feel good," she typed. "You said he'd come back. He didn't. He destroyed me." No reply came. Tessa was grappling with her own fallout. Rumors swirled that her husband was filing for divorce, and her office fling had vanished. It was as if every connection Elise and Tessa had touched had been rigged to collapse. The days blurred into a haze of job rejections and public shaming. Strangers stared in coffee shops. Her name was a whispered warning in Willow Creek. Elise tried to drink the pain away, but Nathan's note haunted her. "The fire's yours now." He hadn't gloated, hadn't sent a single taunting message. His victory was in his absence, in the wreckage he'd left without lifting a finger. Yet even in his triumph, Nathan had left a crack in the door. Elise lay on the motel bed, the ceiling stained and peeling, her mind replaying every choice. She wanted to feel alive, but this wasn't life. It was exile. One evening, She wandered into a community center hosting a talk on overcoming failure. The speaker, a woman with kind but piercing eyes, said, "You can't rebuild until you own the rubble. Blame keeps you buried. Truth sets you free." The words hit Elise like a slap, waking something buried beneath her shame. The next day, she sat at a wobbly motel desk and wrote a letter. "Nathan, your silence was louder than any fight could have been. I broke us, chasing a spark I thought was freedom. I listened to Tessa, mistook attention for worth, and burned everything we built. You didn't ruin me, I did. But even in your anger, you didn't crush me completely. You let me fall, and I'm grateful for that mercy. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I see it now. Elise." She mailed it to his office. No return address. No hope of a reply. It was for her, a step toward facing the mirror Nathan had held up. Weeks passed in quiet survival. Elise volunteered at a local women's shelter, part of her court-ordered community service. The work was humbling, grounding. One rainy afternoon, as she stepped out to grab coffee, a familiar truck pulled into the lot. Same model, same scratch on the tailgate. Her heart stopped. Nathan climbed out, his work boots splashing in a puddle. He didn't see her yet, but the sight of him, steady, unchanged, stirred something she couldn't name. Was it closure, or the faint hope of a reckoning still to come? Elise stood frozen in the drizzle, watching Nathan cross the shelter's parking lot. His stride was purposeful, his tool belt slung low, as if the past months hadn't touched him. The sight of him, real, not a memory, twisted something in her chest, a mix of regret and longing for a life she'd torched. She almost turned away, but he glanced up, his eyes catching hers. No anger, no coldness, just a quiet stillness. "Elise," he said, his voice neutral, like they were strangers sharing a bus stop. Her throat tightened. "What are you doing here?" He nodded toward the shelter. "They hired me. New rec room edition. I build things, remember?" A faint smile flickered, gone as quickly as it came. Elise laughed, a soft, shaky sound. "Of course." She hesitated, then added, "I sent you a letter." Nathan's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened slightly. "I got it," he said. "Didn't plan to answer, but I'm here now." She waited, her breath shallow. "You were right," he said after a pause. "I didn't fight you. Not because I didn't care, but because fighting would have turned me into someone I didn't want to be. I had to let you go to keep myself." Elise's eyes stung, tears mixing with the rain. "You got your revenge, though," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan tilted his head, considering. "Not revenge. I just held up a mirror. You chose what to see." The words landed gently but cut deep, their truth undeniable. A long silence stretched between them, the rain pattering on the asphalt. "Are you happy now?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Nathan glanced at the shelter's half-built frame, its beams stark against the gray sky. "I'm moving forward," he said. "That's enough for now." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm trying to do that too." They stood there a moment longer, two people who'd set each other ablaze, and somehow emerged, scarred but standing. Nathan gave a small nod, then turned toward the shelter. "Take care, Elise," he said, and walked away. She watched him go, the weight of finality settling over her, not crushing but grounding. For the first time, she felt the faint stirrings of peace. The weeks that followed were a slow climb. Elise's life was a shadow of what it had been. No home, no marriage, no reputation, but she pieced together small victories. The shelter's staff praised her dedication, offering her a part-time role. She took it, grateful for purpose. Job interviews remained brutal. Her name still carried a stain, but she learned to face the rejections with quiet resolve. The online vitriol faded, replaced by newer scandals, and Elise deleted her ex account, choosing silence over the noise. She moved into a tiny studio apartment, its walls bare but clean. Each night, she journaled, not to erase the past, but to own it. "I chased a spark and burned my world down," she wrote one evening. "But ashes can be soil. I'm learning to grow." The words felt like a vow, not to Nathan or Tessa, but to herself. Tessa had vanished from her life, their friendship a casualty of the chaos they'd sown. Rumors said Tessa was fighting a custody battle, her own choices catching up. Julian was a ghost, his name unspoken. Elise didn't hate them, she pitied them, and that felt like progress. One evening, at a shelter fundraiser, Elise overheard a volunteer mention Nathan's name. "He's doing well," the woman said. "Started his own firm, moved to Oak Ridge. Even dating someone, I hear." The words stung, but not as deeply as they might have. Elise pictured Nathan, his steady hands building something new, and she hoped he was healing. She didn't cling to fantasies of reconciliation. Those had burned away. But she carried a quiet gratitude for the man who'd let her fall without destroying her completely. Months later, Elise stood outside the shelter, now complete with Nathan's Rec Room edition. A plaque by the door credited his firm, his name etched in simple font. She traced it with her finger, a smile tugging at her lips. The speaker's words from the community center echoed in her mind. Accountability is the first brick in rebuilding. She'd laid that brick, and others were following. Elise walked away, the spring air warm against her skin. She was no longer the woman who'd poured wine and planned a reckless confession, nor the one who'd knelt sobbing on a porch. She was someone new, forged in fire, still learning her shape. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, she wasn't running from it. She was walking, step by deliberate step, toward a life she'd build herself, one that no spark, no matter how bright, could ever burn down again.